that your truth is the most important thing. So I pray, Father, that our hearts and minds would be open for truth. And Father, right now we're going to be talking about the gut and the brain and how they're connected. And then right after that, we're going to go right into different type of herbs. We're going to look at some herbs. We're going to look at what they're good for. And then we're going to look at some health issues. And then we're going to look at some herbs that might help for those things. So Father, we pray for your presence. We pray for knowledge and wisdom. And I pray, Father, that you will put the right words in my mouth. So then that way it will be uplifting and it would be educational and that it would be simple that we can implement these things. So, Father, I pray that you will help us to be overcomers and that we will hear you speak to us today and that you'll give us that extra energy to be able to do those things. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, talking about the brain and gut, I do have a little booklet that if you're here tomorrow, you can get one. And it's just a thin little thing like this. And it talks about the gut health because gut health is so vital when it comes to being healthy. And a lot of people don't realize it, but it's one of the major areas that we need to take care of. And the reason why I'm taking this out is because I'm going to be talking about this when we talk about the brain. All right, so with that, my ministry is called Health in Your Everyday Cares, and that spells out my last name, Hayek. All right, let's hope this works now. All right, so what do you know? This is the question I want to ask you. What do you know about your brain or about the human brain? Anybody have any idea? What do you know about your brain? All I know is that when I was in about, I don't know, 5th grade, 3rd grade, I wanted to be a brain surgeon. I thought that would be pretty cool. But I had a dream, and I was in surgery, and I was taking a person's brain out, and I'm thinking, oh, wow, this is great. You know, fixing it up and everything. And I'm trying to put the brain back in. I couldn't do it. So I woke up like, oh no, I don't want to go through that in real life. So I'm like, okay, I'm not supposed to be a brain surgeon. So basically, I do work with people's brains because I'm helping people to understand that your brain is so important that it's tied into every area of your body. And that if your brain thinks something, then you usually go into that direction. So our brain is very important, and you're going to learn a lot of things as we talk about the brain. So just give me one thing that you can think of when you think of your brain. Like, what do you know about it? It doesn't work the way it's supposed to? Wow. What is it? Synapses. The synapses. As you can see these synapses, right? Yeah. What else? There's a blood-brain barrier. Say that 10 times as fast as you can. And that would be very difficult. But yeah, so with that, yeah, that's another thing that's very important too, because everybody has a little bit different when it comes to that. Some people can handle a lot of medication. It doesn't even faze them one bit. I knew of a friend that had to have some procedure done, and they were trying to put her out. And they couldn't get her out. And they're like, man, we overdid what we were supposed to do. And then finally they got her out, and they're like, oh my goodness. And then she wakes up in the middle of the procedure. She looks on the screen. She goes, oh, my goodness, that person doesn't look good because she's in the health field. And she's like, that is not good. And then they're like, oh, my goodness. So they had to put her out. And so then finally when she was all done and they were done with everything, she realized she was looking at her own case. And that was kind of a scary thing because it wasn't good. Yeah, so, okay. So I'm going to share some really interesting things that I found about the brain. Did you know that the information in your brain travels up to 268 miles per hour? Most cars don't even go 200. I think last time I checked on mine, the speedometer says like 180. But if I were to go 180, that's not even probably half. That's almost half of what we're saying here, 268 miles per hour. That's pretty fast. Maybe the guys that drive those race cars, maybe they go that fast. I don't know, but I know they go pretty fast. But these neurons, when they're stimulated, they generate this electric impulse, right? And as that impulse goes, it's traveling down from one cell to the next cell to the next cell. And that's how fast it goes, 268 miles per hour. I mean, that is just phenomenal. That's why I think the brain is so cool. Another thing is we have 86 billion. Oh, my goodness. That's a lot. Billion, can you even understand what billion is? How about a million? How about 1,000, right? So we have 86 billion neurons, and that's like virtual unlimited capacity or storage, just like this thing right here. This is a storage unit for these things, right? So this storage unit, I think, is like 2 or 5 or what do you call it? Terabytes, right? So that's a lot. What's a terabyte? I don't know, but it's a whole lot of storage, right? So like I've got way more than this, but this is what I have here. So these are like 32, 128, 16, you know, so we've got a whole bunch of these. So what I like to think about it is, like, this is our brain, right? This is our brain. And then as we take these, it's like they're in different areas in this brain. So what's happening in our brain, like this part is firing off if we're like doing this kind of a thing, and then you're doing this. So you're doing 2 things at a time, but you know what, I'm actually doing 3 or maybe even 4 because I'm also moving this other arm, plus I'm speaking and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. So you see, this is what's happening. So all these areas in our brain are being fired off. So like when you put all those things inside here, it's like you're opening up all these things as you're doing these different things. Now they say that you can only really do one thing at a time. Well, I just proved to you that you can do more than one thing at a time. So, you know, they say, oh yeah, I chew bubble gum and I walk. Well, I can speak and move my hands and all of that at once. So we can, but it's better if you do one thing at a time because that way you can truly concentrate on that one thing and do it really, really good. Yeah, so you need patience. One thing at a time. Yeah, because you have to have patience just to do one thing at a time. Now you know, if you're listening to someone on the radio, telephone, and you're taking notes, you're listening and taking notes at the same time. Well, yeah, kind of, right? So that probably is okay because it's kind of working together. So if we're doing some other kind of work and then we're doing this other work, really you're only doing one thing at a time in a sense. But maybe you could be doing more than one thing, but your mind is going so fast that you want to get all these things done. So that's why you are in this situation, and God is just saying, slow down, you're moving too fast. Take the time, smell the roses, and know that I am with you, and everything's going to get done when it needs to get done. So that's like chill out, right? We need a chill pill. We need to chill out a little bit. So these neurons, this connection of these neurons, it adds up to 1 quadrillion or 1,000 trillion connections. These are like big, huge numbers, and I love math. So it's just like, wow, to what power is that, right? And that's why it's so fascinating because our brain is small. I mean, this is kind of small, even though that these are smaller. But I got all these plus some in this. I just wish I would have put my main one. That was my really important one. I just wish I would have put it in this, because a lot of my talks, I can't get them because the thing don't work. And when I went to ask about it, the young guy goes, oh, that's such an old USB flash drive. They don't make those no more. And I'm like, thanks for the comfort. My life is on there. Is there any way we can pull that information out? Well, you can go to this place and they might be able to do it, to this Geek Squad thing, right? You go there and they're like, well, you know, it's going to cost about $400. It could cost even up to $1,000. We can't even guarantee we're going to get everything off of there because we got to take that, we got to pull that thing apart, and then we got to get in there, and then we got to figure out how to make it work. And I'm like, okay, just start over. Start over. It's going to be fine because, you know, it's really here anyway. It's right here anyway. When you do go through the information, it's right here somewhere. That's where we got to say, Lord, help me to remember what I need to say. And then he will take care of it. Here's some things. Did you know that the brain, the spinal cord, you know the spinal cord, right? It stops growing at the age of 4. That's unbelievable. Age 4? That's as long as your spinal cord's going to get. That is wild, right? And here's the myth. 30-some years ago, I was taught that you only use 10% of your brain. And not only that, but all the brain cells that you have are it. You will have no more, so you don't want to waste them. Well, the myth is our brain cells die and they renew. So we do get more brain cells. So that's how phenomenal the brain is. When God made man, male and female, he created us in such a way that he did some powerful downloads. And our mind is the master of it all. Because who sits right here in our minds when we make decisions is going to win every time. Is it going to be God, or is it going to be Satan, or is it going to be the world? You know what I'm saying? Who are we putting on the throne right here in our minds? That's the big thing. And also, our brain only weighs 3 pounds. Now, you might say 10 when you have someone laying down and you're picking up their head. Well, you have to consider that, you know, the skull weighs some weight. So that's also part of it. So with these are phenomenal things. And the truth is, people probably only use 10% anyway. It's because, you know, some people that use way more than that, now they're special. And they know so much that it's hard for them to be able to tell you stuff because they're thinking on a whole nother wavelength. But people that can actually take that wavelength and make it so simple to understand, I think are more brilliant. Because that way everybody's part of it. Now, this is the most interesting thing that I think. Did you know that your brain generates 23 watts of energy or power? And it's enough power to actually light up your light bulb. 23 watts. So your brain is so powerful that it can actually light up a light bulb. And you know, when people have great ideas, what do they think of? Well, they put a little light bulb above someone's head. And as you can see, that's probably why. Because the mind is brilliant. The mind is powerful. And when we understand how important the brain is and to take care of this right up here, then we're going to start doing things differently, so then that way we can truly have great ideas and we'll be able to use our brain in the right way, so then that way we can make a huge difference in other people's lives. Now, one thing that affects the brain the most is when we don't get enough rest. When you don't get enough rest, how do you feel the next day? You're tired, you're lousy, you just like, I just want to go back to bed. But then when you try to go back to bed, you can't really sleep good anyway because the sun's coming in, or you're just not feeling that great. Now, I used to work 12-hour shifts at a nuclear plant in San Onofre nuclear plant in California. And I worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. My roommate worked 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I told the lady, I said, no, you don't understand. I need to work from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., not 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Well, you know what? God had that all designed. Because you see, that nuclear plant had somebody there that God appointed to be there 24 hours, except for the Sabbath time, right? And so I would go in and I'd be telling everybody, and I said, how can I witness, Lord? How can I witness? So you know what I started doing? I say, hi, how are you today? I said, hi, I'm blessed. How about you? People were like, blessed? There'd be a lady that would run to me all the time like, oh, so how are you blessed today? What's going on today? And I said, oh, let me tell you, this morning I read from the Bible and it said da-da-da-da-da. And she'd be like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Well, do you realize that God honored my prayer saying, Lord, please help me so I can work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.? What he did was he made sure that the very last day that I was going to go to work, which was against the rules, because if you got caught reading a book, you could get fired. So I had a duffel bag, and I filled that duffel bag up with Christ Object Lessons, Steps to Christ, or Shelter in the Storm, Great Controversy, you know, all these books, Ministry of Healing. I just put all these books in this big duffel bag. I went to work. Someone said to me, you know, I really want to know God. I said, here's a really good book, Desire of Ages. Oh, you know, I really want to know how to pray. I said, oh, here's a really good book. It's called Shelter in the Storm or Steps to Christ. Oh, thank you. Oh, you know, I just wondered about the world, you know. It's just like really crazy. I said, oh, here's a really good book called Great Controversy. And oh, you know, I really want to know how to get healthy and blah, blah. Oh, here's a great book called Ministry of Healing. And by the end of the day, and plus I didn't have any room for lunch, so all I had was 2 slices of toast that I put in there. That was my lunch. And that's a 12-hour shift. So anyway, after I was all done, gave out the last book, I'm walking out, done for the day, and I'm like, wow, that was just simply amazing. All those books were gone. Well, do you realize that that was Thursday night to Friday morning? That means that the next night I had off, or I worked Saturday night, or whatever, however it went. And so I had Sabbath off. And so when I got back from church, because I usually had to take a nap, and then I would give Bible studies the next morning on Sunday. Well, anyway, I got this call, and I'm thinking, Lord, should I answer to that message, or should I just not? And God said, listen to it. So I played it. It was my boss saying, I worked it out. You don't have to go to work tonight. Go to work Sunday morning. Oh, okay. So then I had to call up my Bible person, and I said, hey, can we have Bible study tonight? So then that way I could go to work in the morning. So my friend and I, we started going to work in the morning at the same time. But you see, even somebody from Minnesota came all that way, flew out to California and walked with me on the beach and said, you know it's not good for your health to be working at night. That'll shave off 5 years of your life. And I said, yeah, I know. But I'm just doing this for a period of time so then that way I can keep doing God's work. And so, you know, I'm just doing this to get some money so I can go on my next trip or doing something, right? And so it's just only for a short period of time. But even during that short period of time, we see how God maneuvers and he helps us do these things, but it's not for long term, right? Because we know that that's not healthy to do some of these things. And that's exactly, we have to understand that when we don't get enough rest, that our brain starts lacking. Our brain gets deprived. And what happens is we get this buildup on the cells in the brain. And it's a protein that is not good. And so when this protein builds up in the brain, it can be linked to Alzheimer's disease. And we're all familiar with Alzheimer's. We're probably all familiar with you know, some other things like depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. They're all in that same kind of area when it comes to the brain, because those are the big ones that we think of, like, oh man, I don't want to forget my name. I don't want to forget who I am. I don't want to forget my friends. I don't want to forget people that I know, because that would be the most scariest thing in the world, wouldn't it? You just like, one day you're like, duh, and that's it. Like, you don't remember hardly nothing. That would be a horrible thing, not only for you, but the people around you that love you. Because you'd be like, no, don't do that. I don't know who you are. Stop. That would be a very scary thing. But these are the things that are taking place in the world around us. A lot of people are getting Alzheimer's. A lot of people are getting Parkinson's. And it's probably, maybe, possibly because of sleep deprivation, or it could be however that buildup is getting into the brain itself of that protein. And so the brain has to work in a certain way in order to do this, to clean it up. And so we're going to talk a little more about that in a bit. But the brain tissue, to get a better idea of the brain and how amazing this is that, you know how big a piece of sand is? A little grain of sand. It's smaller than a piece of rice. It's so small it's almost like dust. You know what I'm saying? You go to a beach, that's a lot of sand. If you just have like a handful of sand, that's a lot of sand, right? Even in the Bible it says the sand of the sea. Wow, that's a lot of people. So here, the brain tissue size of a grain of sand contains 100,000 neurons in your brain. That's a whole lot of neurons that are in your brain, and it's 1 billion synapses. That means it's really, you know, everything that's just clicking together, and it's just the way our brain thinks is phenomenal. We can study the brain, and I think that we're going to be learning more and more about the brain forever. Just how God has created us is just amazing. Now, stroke. So we talked a little bit about Alzheimer's. Well, stroke is when there's damage to the neurons, meaning that there's no oxygen from blood flow. Parkinson's is somewhat similar because what happens is the cells die. And when the cells die, they don't reproduce. So how do these cells die? So that protein that gets built up there is kind of like this. We see a lot of apple orchards, right? If you get a bucket or a basket of apples, and you just set it aside and you don't do anything with those, because, you know, apples last a long time, and then like 2 or 3 months later you look at your apples, but you just, oh yeah, we can eat a few of these, but you don't realize the apple on the bottom is rotten. Now, if you don't even look at them for another few more months, do you realize the rotten one affected all the rest of them? This is what happens in the brain. When these cells die, they die. The process to eat them up and get them out is what's taking place when people get Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and all of that. So what's happening is the cells die, but that process of eating it up and taking it out is not happening. And so that's why it's so important that we understand that there is a process that the brain uses in order to keep it working and functioning the way it should be. Now, when I forget things, it's not that I didn't really forget it. It's just that I never wrote it down. Or I'm just saying yes to everybody. Yeah, I can fit you in. Yeah, I can fit you in. That's not a good thing. You need to definitely make sure that you put it on your calendar, whatever format that is. Don't have more than one. I have 3, which is not good. Because now if it's not all synced into one, you got problems. Because now you have to be 3 people in one. Because you might have 2 people at the same time scheduled, and that's a problem. So you have to make sure that your schedule is your main schedule. Like your brain, it's that one big piece that has all these in there, and it has to be sunk together, so then that way you can get the information out when you need it. So a lot of brain issues that we've been seeing is anxiety, depression, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson, and brain fog. Now, you might think, well, brain fog isn't that bad, is it? Well, that's to let you know that's a signal that things are starting to happen in a certain way. If you have like anxiety, you're pacing back and forth, that's kind of being anxious, right? Depression, I don't really feel like doing that today. Yeah, I do like to do that, but I don't really want to do that. I'd rather just stay home. Maybe I should just go to bed. Maybe I'll just, depression. Now, some depression it's in stages. Some of them are just like, you're just like, depression. Dementia, that's almost like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's can both get into bad stages of dementia. So dementia is probably the worst one out of all of them, right? But Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, I've had people that have had Parkinson's, and I've had pretty good results with reversing their disease. And so with all of these, nothing is impossible. Luke 1:37, nothing is impossible when it comes to God. He created us, He can heal us. And so whoever He wants to heal, He will heal. When Jesus was on the earth, He healed every single person that came to Him. And that's the thing. People that come to you, you're like, okay, we got this case. What are we going to do? First thing I do is pray. Let us pray, especially if I have to do the guesswork. If I don't test, it's a whole lot of guess. So with that, you just have to stay in communion with your boss. My boss is Jesus. So as long as I'm in tune with Him, He will tell me what I need to do. Because when I worked at Country Life, I didn't do very many tests. I had nothing at my disposal. And so when people would come in and they say, oh, I got this problem, and they'd be telling me, I said, well, what else you got? And then they didn't say any more. And I said, okay, well, let's pray. So as I was praying for them and claiming promises, I was having communication with God. I said, okay, God, what really is wrong with this person? What is it that I really need to do for this person? What do they really need? So after I got done talking to God about this and praying for them for healing, then I would tell them, I said, okay, so you got this. So instead of doing my regular protocol that I would actually do for that thing, God would say, no, you're going to give them this, this, and this herb. So then I would be like, yeah, but that has nothing to do. So then I would look at them and I'd ask them a few questions because I know what these herbs are for. Oh, yeah, by the way, I do have that. Oh, yeah, and I have that too. And I said, okay, that's the main problem you got. So I would be putting those herbs together. And I said, do that. Let me know in a couple weeks how everything is going. So if we need to tweak anything, we can do that. And so a lot of times they wouldn't come back until about a month later. And they're like, man, you're the bomb. You're the doctor of the year. You're the best ever. And I'm like, I don't even know you. Because, you see like 20 people a day or more. And so then they would come back and say, man, everything was done and within so many days. Like, I was healed in 3 days. Or I was, all these phenomenal things. Yeah, after that month, man, I was feeling great. And I'm like, praise God. I mean, because I can't take the credit. I was just an instrument used to get the things together for them to take. You know what I'm saying? God's the one who gave me the protocol. And so, I mean, people would come in all the time and they would be saying stuff like that. And I'm like, God is good. I have the best boss ever because he's talking to me and he's using me. And so doing that kind of work, I mean, sometimes you get a little scared because you're like, oh my goodness. But if you're very, very good at listening to what people have to say and say, let's pray, now you got it. Let's pray, now you got the right recipe. Because when you say it's time to pray, that means you're going to be connected with the one that can do all things. You know, it's not even in the, and when we get to the next section on herbs, it's not even about the herb. The thing that grows out there, that is not the healer. The healer is God. And we have to understand that. The physician is not God. The physician is not the healer. They're just an instrument used in that capacity to heal others, as long as they're looking to God as the boss. Now, when you go to medical school, you don't learn that. What you learn in medical school is to be God. You are God. You're the one who makes the rules. You're the one who does whatever. That's what you learn in school. But in the school that I've gone to before I went to those classes, those things, I learned the truth and the foundation of how to heal people. And that's through God. So I'm thankful for that training that I got. So there's 5 triggers for brain disease. 5 triggers. The first one is stress and anxiety. This is where our brain says, okay, am I going to fight this out or am I just going to get out of there? So the choice has to be one or the other. That's our response. That's just what happens. But when we have stress, sometimes you just don't have enough energy to keep on going to fight it out. So you're just like, get out of here. And when you have anxiety, the same thing. You got to figure out how to take care of these things. The second thing is neurodegenerative disease. This is when those cells die. So that neural part, your nervous system, degenerates. It gets worse, like Alzheimer's and dementia. The next thing is inflammation. This is like a big thing because I do a lot of functional medicine. So I look at inflammation. Inflammation is like a cause of a lot of stuff. Just like stress back in the day, stress is the #1 disease, the #1 problem that people have. Well, inflammation goes right along with that. Because if you have inflammation, then that means things are not working. When the cell is working properly, that means everything is communicating, oxygen, water, nutrients, and everything is getting in, and waste is coming out. It's working perfectly. But when we get a little bit of inflammation, what happens to the cell is it starts getting unhealthy. And so the responses are not as good as they should be. That inflammation is getting in the way that it can't respond or communicate like it should. So maybe nutrition is not quite getting in or things are getting stopped up. So then your next part is your cell is so full of inflammation that it ain't even working. In the case of diabetes, what happens is when it's in that state, you know, the doctor gives you medication that's insulin because the cell is not communicating, and so it's not letting the insulin in. And so they're just poking it and forcing it into the cell. Well, they haven't taken care of the problem. We have to get rid of the inflammation. Once we get rid of that inflammation, we start going in the opposite direction, and once that inflammation is gone, we got healthy cells. So to me, I think that everything can be reversed. It just kind of depends on what phase it's in. How long has it been in that phase? I've had people where they were diabetic since their youth, since they were like 12, 13 years old, pancreas not working within 17 days, and they couldn't even walk. They said that their feet, it's like sandbags. They couldn't even pick it up. They had to walk like this with a walker. And they were young. And I'm like, I think we can help you. Did some treatments. Like, what's wrong with that picture? Is she okay? Yeah, she's picking up her feet like they're light. Next thing you know, in 3 days, she's walking without walker. She's feeling really good. After the 17 days, her pancreas is working. She's off all her medication. She is healed, a new person. You see, that's God. The fourth thing is diet, our food. What kind of food are we eating? Because the food can sabotage our brain. We eat certain foods, and our brain is like clogged. I don't know about you, but I don't eat a lot of fried foods. So if someone gives me something that's fried, all I have to eat is just one of those, and I'm like, oh, I can't have any more because my brain feels like a whole bunch of oil just covered it. I mean, it's a weird feeling, but that's what happens. My best friend used to love French fries. I don't really care for French fries. I don't know why, but I love white potatoes. But French fry, it's just not really that, it's not on the top of my list. But hers, it was like, yes, she could eat it every day. And I'm like, really, do we have to? Well, since I love you and my friend, okay, we'll go get some French fry. And she would get the big one. And she'd be like, oh, here, have a few. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, that's all I can have. I'm good. So what about toxic environment? That's our 5th trigger when it comes to brain diseases. Toxic environment is heavy metals, pesticides, and GMOs affect your brain. Did you know that even those little shells that are for like tacos, that only has just a few ingredients in there? But make sure you read the other ingredients too, way at the bottom, because they're putting biogenetic something in there, which is GMO. It's just been modified. So make sure that you're reading everything on the package to make sure that you're getting the right stuff to eat. Yeah, that's kind of amazing, right? Well, these are the things that are happening in our world, and we don't even know half of the stuff that we're eating because we're just putting our trust in whatever we buy. And so that's kind of a, well, what do? You pray, and you go, and you get the best that you possibly can. So I need just 2 people to say something that you learned in that first segment about the brain. Anything, whatever you learned. Any little thing that I said. Just 2 people. Yes?
Don't be stressed. That's the enemy to your brain.
Right. Okay, good. Don't be stressed. Yes?
But brain cells that die have nowhere to go.
Right, they just stay there. Yeah, and they affect all the other cells. Very good. All right. All right, so now we're going to get into understanding the gut and the brain and how it works together. Our gut, very important, because Hippocrates said all disease begins where? In the gut. Wow, all diseases. He had something to say when he said all diseases begin in the gut. I don't know if that's true, but I kind of want to think a lot of the majority of the diseases do happen there, because 75% of our immune system is managed by the gut. So if we want to make sure that we have a good immune system, we have to make sure that we're taking care of this, making sure that the good biome and the bad biome and all that's going on, that it's working together. And you know what T2D stands for? Type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, skin problems, hair issues, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, asthma, allergies, anxiety, depression, dementia, obesity, inflammatory bowel disease are all affected by the gut. Amazing, right? It is amazing, because the gut is actually connected physically by millions of nerves. Because if you think about it, our nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. The brain and the spinal cord. So with these millions of nerves, the main thing that we look at is the base of here. And we're looking at the vagus nerve and the nervous system. Because if we're having problems with the information traveling down the nerves, and every muscle has a nerve connected to it, because that's how we move, right? And so that pulse is going down, and you're not even saying this to yourself, move my left arm. You know, your brain is already doing it. You're thinking, or you just automatically do that, but your brain is saying, move the left arm. You know, make that first finger do something. You know what I'm saying? So we're not actually saying it to ourselves, but our brain is already doing that information and going right to that to do that. Now, when you get in an accident and you can't do that and you have to reprogram everything, you have to say, okay, I got to move my right foot. Now my heel. You know what I'm saying? These things, when they're reprogramming that, it's rewiring your brain and your spinal cord and all those nerves to get those things moving. And a lot of people get frustrated because it's very hard when you have to redo everything. But that's why it's so important to understand that the brain is connected to the gut. There's 50 million neurons in the stomach and 100 billion in the brain. So we're kind of seeing that 500 million to 100 billion. As we see, those are two main areas, our brain and our gut, and how closely they play a role together. We see here in the gut that the neurotransmitters, which produce in the brain, control our feelings. Serotonin, emotions, being on a schedule, waking up at a certain time, going to bed at a certain time, all these things, our brain has these neurotransmitters. Well, what are neurotransmitters? There could be hormones, there could be proteins. There's something that's going across from one thing, like serotonin, melatonin. You've heard of those things? Well, those things, did you realize that they're really here in the gut more so than in the brain? Amazing, right? So the gut is so, so important to understand. Now, these neurotransmitters that are produced in the gut, there's trillions of microbes. That's why we have microbiomes. And this is where we see all of this being produced. In massage school, they'll tell you that if you're massaging someone and they start crying, don't go near the stomach. Go to their foot or go to their hand, because that's a safe area. And that's a place that you can, touch and you're safe there. You go here, this is like, this is space here. And what do most people see? They see that big stomach on that woman because she's pregnant. And what do they want to do? They want to touch it. Are you kidding me? Hello, I don't even know you. You know what I mean? So this is, if you've ever been pregnant, have you ever had that? You walk in the store and and next thing, oh, who are you, And it's just like, I don't know what it is. We're just gravitated to that big stomach because they're pregnant and it's exciting. Wow, I like to see the little baby, kicking in there or whatever, and you see this, whoa. But anyway, we see that this area right here has a lot of emotion going on, a lot of emotion. And that can cause some of these things like depression or fear and anxiety. We'll skip that. All right, so probiotics. What does probiotics do? It increases the GABA, gamma, I had it on that other slide. The gamma aminobutyric acid. So this is very important to have because that's one of the things that you can use, and you can buy that at the health food store, GABA, and that will help in those areas. So when you increase that in your body, right, because you can buy that and you can take that as pills, when you increase that, it will help to reduce anxiety and depression-like behavior. So if you're just like moping around all day, you don't have really much energy, maybe a little depression is setting in, maybe you got some bad news. So just kind of put you in that frame of mind. You got to get out of that, whatever that is. We can mourn for so long because we lost something, whether it be everything we owned because it was a fire. It could be your loved one that died that you were so attached to. I mean, these things are real. God gave us feelings, and we need to express those feelings. But yet at the same time, we have to understand how to deal with them. Yeah. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So now we have to get out there and have more friends. And sometimes it's hard to let other people in to where that person might have been in your life. But like rich people say, you lose everything, you start all over fresh. It's a new start. Wow. In business, it might be a little bit easier. I don't know. But if you're down to your last and you lose it all, that's it. But that's the thing. We have to understand that we've got to get enough energy and understanding and say, you know what? This is not final. Failure is not final. It's just to let us know that we have to go through some of these things to learn more. And it's not easy sometimes. It's just not easy. So this is what a healthy and a leaky gut looks like. So on the healthy side, we know that our CNS, which is the central nervous system, it has healthy behavior, emotions, and cognitive, and it has psychological and clearance of proteins of the brain. It also has response to the immune system stimulation. It's a physiological GABA signaling, so it's properly doing what it's supposed to do, and it has a healthy gut. On the other side, with leaky gut, you can see the difference. You see there's no cuts in there, and there's nothing going through. But when it comes to a leaky gut, we see that those things are getting in there, and it's making a lot of problems because the way our gut is, it's like a net, and they have to be close together. If they're not close together and they get apart, then things can get through and it breaks and it causes a lot of pain. It causes a lot of problems in your gut area. So what happens here is it accumulates proteins in the brain, because when we're going to look at the brain next and how it looks compared, right? So this is the gut looking at that, and the walls inside of our brain, how that creates problems. Our cognitive dysfunction, we're not thinking straight, we're not analyzing stuff right. Dementia, depression, anxiety. So we're seeing a lot of things that increased GI permeability, oxidative stress, enhanced immune stimulation, altered the GABA signaling. Things are just not going right. It's like everything's haywired. It's just not a good situation. Now when we look at the brain, because we looked at the gut, now we're looking at the brain, and you can see the normal part of the brain. Everything is really nice, it's plump about, and we got a lot of white matter there, looking really nice. And we see the hippocampus, which is very vital. We see the difference between the two. This doesn't look good. This looks like spasmodic or something. It's just like crazy. It's not plump like it should here. And so this is what Alzheimer's brain looks like compared to a normal brain. So when we're seeing that kind of helps us see what's going on. And then we see the ventricles. So that's a lot of areas. So the white matter area is less. And so you want to have more of that. And so we see that change, and we already know that these things are taking place. So we need to do something to reverse that. And the more that we see some of these signs that are going on in the gut, also in the brain, like the brain fog and stuff like that, because those are starting phases of other things. And if we don't do something now, then it's going to go to the next, to the next, to the next, or get worse. So what we were talking about with these cells dying, so we have the native folding, then we have the misfolding, and then the inclusion body of the formation, and then we have the neurodegeneration, which means the cell dies. So the thing that we have to have is this autophagy. If that's not taking place, that's like Pac-Man. He's going around and he's eating up that stuff, boop, 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 right? And that's what we need to make sure that's happening, because when it eats up those dead cells, it takes it out of that area, so then that way it can regenerate. Oh, I didn't have that on there. So when it regenerates, which is really cool, because there's a thing called regeneration, and it's called sprouting. And when that happens, that's a good thing, because that way we can start seeing how the brain is actually working properly. All right. Any questions on the brain and the gut? I just wanted to give that little information to you because I feel as though it's very vital and important for us to know, because our brain and our gut are vital together. Now, I have a whole big thing, and I can talk for over an hour on that. But I just wanted to give you a little bit. Yes?
The probiotics that you talked about, does the dosage depend on the individual, or do you go by what's on the bottle?
Yeah, so both. Here's the thing. It really goes by the person and what they really need. How bad is it? What is actually going on? How badly is the situation? Is going to denote how much you need. 100 billion, 8 strands. I would say you should always have at least 8 strands, 8 to 10 strands. And it needs to be probably about, they start out at about 25 or 10 billion. If you've been on a lot of antibiotics, you're going to need the highest, 100 billion if you can get it. And you're going to have to take it double the amount that's on the bottle and if it's been 10 years, you're going to have to take that for probably a month double dose. And then after that month, then I would go back to the normal amount that's on there and see how everything goes. And then maybe you might have to boost it every so often to an extra dose until we're able to clear out, because that balance of the microbiome, if that balance is not there and it's too much of the bad, then that means that this is not getting fed to keep it balanced, so then that way you're okay. Because antibiotics will eat up all the good stuff, and then you have too much overgrowth of the bad stuff. And then that creates problems. And then the signaling gets off, and then your brain gets off, so it's kind of like the thing going back and forth. And that can be problems for people not being able to sleep. So rest is a really big key. That's like kind of like one of the first things that I find out about people. How are you resting? And a lot of times people don't get very good rest. And so that off balance here, off balance in the brain, the proteins are building up, and then we start seeing a process of degeneration take place.
And as far as the brain, Alzheimer's and dementia, what's the difference between the two, and are they hereditary?
Good question. So a lot of times hereditary usually falls on the place that I do exactly what my mom and dad always did. And so I eat the same way they do, and I have the characteristics just like them. So that would be your genetics, which is probably about 5% of the time. Biggest thing is lifestyle. Our lifestyle is so fast-paced. I mean, you can live out in the country, but you can have a very fast lifestyle pace. And so with that, trying to settle down and not being so quick and, quick in everything, eating and drinking and working and, all of those things, or too many hours. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we stay on a good regimen or a schedule. And that's not always easy, but the more that we do that, our body's going to be able to respond better. So not always is it hereditary. I would say most things are like 5% genetic. The other part of it, like 90%, is lifestyle. So, yeah. The foods that we eat makes a huge difference. Did you know that there's probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics? That's how they make money, because it's all about advertising. It's all about having some kind of a product that's going to do the job. And so we can get caught up into taking a lot of probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, and thinking that that's going to help. But even at that, we have to realize that if we start changing the way we eat, we can actually eat foods that are in all those categories. So we can actually feed our, the prebiotics, feed the probiotics, So we're feeding those healthy, the good bacteria. And so you want to eat a lot of raw stuff. But here's the thing. I have to do tests on people to find out. I have a test where I analyze the hair, and I have like 970 different items that it shows. It shows me their gut health. It shows me if they have any problems with heavy metals, problems with the different types of foods. And what I have found is that even good foods like avocado or onions or, foods that you like, could be soy, it could be beans or whatever it is, apples. Those things could be what's standing in the way of you getting healthy. And it's good stuff that we know is good for us to eat that can be a problem. Now, I have to say that on this test, it has things on there that I would tell people not to eat, like, I don't know, rabbits and, I don't know, some wild animals or whatever. Because I tell people that the best thing is to go with the plant-based stuff and stay focused on those things. But some of those things that are good for you, that you know is good for you, but for you, it might not be good for you for at least 1 to 3 months, depending on if you get a little red mark or if you get an orange mark. But if you get a green mark, that means it's a go, you can eat it. So that's what I do, is I do those hair analysis tests, and then from there, I get a printout that tells me about the foods. It tells me about some vegetarian foods. It tells me about your gut health. It tells me about vitamins and minerals, and it talks about heavy metals, and it talks about things that are processed or things that they put inside of stuff, like your coloring or your additives, different type of additives. So it's like a very comprehensive thing, but it helps me to help you have a protocol put in place just for you, so then that way you can see the results of, maybe some people think they have thyroid problem, but they don't. It's just because they're sensitive to certain foods that's making a problem, or because they're eating certain foods, it's blocking and bringing inflammation inside the system, and so the cells are being shut off and they're not responding the way that they should, or it's too much protein getting into the brain. So I probably said more than what I needed to. Sorry about that.
Oatmeal. I've only noticed that in the last couple of years or so. And I know Laura over there put me onto that. She said she can't eat oatmeal. And I thought, because when I eat it, I just don't feel that good the next day or so. And so I limit the use. I still use it, but I limit it instead of, most people, pretty well eat the same thing most days. And so I choose when I eat it or how I use it.
Yeah, so oatmeal,
I know.
very good question, because oatmeal, you can either get it from a place where they also manufacture other things that you might be allergic to. So that creates a sensitivity for you when you eat oatmeal. Now, if you get oatmeal from like Quaker Oats, which is from Iowa, that's all they do is produce oatmeal on their machinery, in their, in their manufacturing company. So that is going to be probably a better oatmeal than the other one that was manufactured somewhere else on nuts or wheat or whatever. So that's one thing, but there also is a thing where that can cause problems. And with the analysis, it does tell you if oats is part of it. And sometimes you're like, man, I can't have that. I love that. And it's just like, well, try it for at least 3 months. If you can't, try it at least for 1 month, not eating that particular thing. And I'm telling you, when people follow the program, they're like amazed. I have like 98% success rate when I take people through these things. And it's so simple. It's so simple. When I did my PhD, that's too simple. That ain't going to do nothing. And I'm like, well, I've been to too many self-supporting institutions where they reverse diseases. So yeah, water does make a difference. Yeah, changing your diet does make a difference. Yes, water treatments do make a difference. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I've already seen that before I went to medical school. I've already seen that before I went to get my degree for my PhD. I've seen these things, so you can't tell me that it doesn't work. It's kind of like, what's his name? Marco Polo. When he came back to America, he's saying, yeah, I saw these big, huge nuts, man. They were huge. And you know what he's talking about? Coconuts. Yeah, I saw these big, huge animals from the water. He was talking about gators, you know? And they said, when he was on his deathbed, just recant, say everything that you said was false. He says, how can I say that it was false? It's the same thing. When we know something, we just got to say, you can't change my mind. You can't change my mind. So like these things, when we see these things and there's small little adjustments that we make, can make huge difference in our health. All right, anything else? All right, so the next section, I'm going to be talking about herbs. I'm going to identify a number of herbs, and then with that, I'm going to share with you things that they're good for, and then I'm going to talk about some health issues, and then I'm going to share with those health issues what are the top herbs that I would use for those things. And if you want to get a really nice thing, I have an MP4, one of these little things that I'll be selling tomorrow, and it has like 3 sections, so I'm out live showing you some of these things and about that. I'm at UG Pines, actually, so I've got a lot of stuff that I say, yeah, you should come to UG Pines, and you should go through the program, or you should become an LC or an LE or whatever. Or just come and march when they have the natural remedies thing. I mean, that is like phenomenal. It's like a weekend or 4-day thing, and you eat really good during that time. You meet a lot of nice people. You learn a lot of great things. And if you don't want to go to the afternoon thing, it's just your stay and your food. And you get all these morning things and evening things that you can listen to for free. But if you go in the afternoon and pay that extra $75, you get materials, you get hands-on experience, and it's phenomenal. Because I used to teach one of those things. So it's really amazing. All right, well, we're not going to do the welcome meet and greet. That's what I usually do. So in Ministry of Healing, page 128, it says, the only hope of better things is in the education of the people in right principles. First and foremost, we have to know what the principles are, and we have to know what they are, right? So it says, let the physicians teach the people that restorative power is not in drugs, but in nature. So we have to understand that when God created. But we as humans have taken stuff from nature and we changed things up and we made it into drugs, all right? Because that's usually what it is. Most drugs are made out of a plant or urine or something else, right, that is used. And so what we have to understand here is that we need to be restored. And so even the plant itself is natural, But when we have stuff from the natural state, that is where it's really at for the restorative power. It's not in something that's been processed. It's not in something that's medication. But I can't say that all things, when it comes to medication, I think there is a time and a use for that. But if you have to put somebody out or deaden it, I tell you what, use kava kava. That'll put people like, oh yeah, I don't feel anything. So, you know, that does work. So that would be my drug of choice when it comes to herbs instead of using medication like drugs. Now this one here is very profound. It says disease. Okay, what is disease? It's an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. So in case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthy conditions should be changed and wrong habits corrected. Now, I want you to repeat with me the very first sentence. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of health. Let's say it one more time. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. I don't think you understand what you just read. Let's read it one more time. What is disease? Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. So my question is, if you have a disease, let's just say diabetes, how do I want to say this? Okay, if you have a disease, is that a red flag? Does that mean that like in your car when you see the thing that says engine not working properly, that little thing that goes on, that little light, what does that tell you? You're going to go get some tape and you're going to put it over it, right? You know, it just depends, you know. When I had a Jaguar, that's what my Jag guy told me to do, because my car got old and it was over many hundreds of thousands of miles. And he said, if it bothers you, just put a tape over it. And I said, no, that ain't right. He goes, trust me, when you get over 200,000 miles, that light will go on because it's going to say you need an oil change. You don't need an oil change. You just had an oil change. But certain cars, when they get over certain miles, it tells you that because they didn't think people were going to have the car that long. I love that car. It was when I bought it, I got scared because it was like tonnage. Like, how many elephants is that? Whoa. What did I buy? I didn't buy a car. I bought machinery. Like my dad bought a big combine or something. Oh, I bought machinery here. But disease is an effort of nature to free the system. So is disease good or bad? It's a friend. Is disease a friend or a foe? Disease is an effort to free the system. Disease is an effort to free the system. So when you get sick, when you don't feel right, that's disease. It's the engine light telling you there's something wrong. Are you going to continue to go forward, or are you going to stop and take it to the shop and get it checked out? Take it to the shop and get it checked out, right? Or if you know what to do, then you need to go do it, right? Don't put a piece of tape over it. If it's a new car, don't do that, because you know there's something really wrong. I had a little nail. Actually, it wasn't a little one. It was about like that long. And it's the one that they use for, like, I think when they put tin on your house or whatever. I have no idea how it got in my tire. And I would have the windows down, and it's like tick, 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 tick. And I'm like, what in the world is that? I didn't even know what it was. And so one day when I came outside, I said, well, let me just check my tires, because that's what I always used to do. Whenever I use, like, the cars at UG Pines, I always make my little rounds. I put the lights on, make sure everything's working, everything, you know, so that way we're good to go, and off I go. And I always take a walk around the car before I use it, so then that way I know from each time that I use it from day to day, I know what's going on. Well, when my own vehicle, I happened to come out, and I'm like, whoa, look at that. It was a big round thing like that. I'm like, whoa, that's a big, whatever that is, a nail or something. So I said, well, I probably need to take care of that, because this has been going on for about a month. So I called up a friend of mine. It was a Friday, and I said, hey, I was just wondering, do you have any time to take a look at my tire? Because I think I need to get I hope I just don't have to buy a new tire, you know? Because when I had a Cadillac, they say that, you know, like how your tire's like this, and if it's like this far from the end, you have to get a new tire because of the tread. Well, this thing was like right there. So anyway, I took it to the guy, my friend. Yeah, no problem, man. And so he got this little kit out. He said, you can buy this little kit at Walmart for like 20 bucks. I'm like, yeah, but not everybody knows how to use it, so you show me how it's done. So he went in there, he pulled the thing out, and he had this little thing, he put it in there, and he pulled it out. I said, wow, that's easier than having surgery, you know? So he did all that, and he said, oh, it should be good now. And I said, I don't need to get a new tire. No, you should be fine. It's been good ever since. You put a little more air in there, and we're good to go. But when you have leakage of air in your car tire, a little thing on the panel comes up and says, oh, yeah, the back rear tire on the right side. That's the one that doesn't have enough air. You know how that is. You know when the temperatures change, your tires will say, oh, that's 32, that's 34, that's 20, whatever. You know, it'll tell you what the temperature is on those, unless, of course, you have an old car. If you have an old car, that ain't so bad either, because, you know, you run them until they're done, right? So disease, is it a friend or is it a foe? How many say it's a friend? How many say it's a foe? How many people don't know? You don't like to feel bad? Nobody likes to feel bad. But here's the thing. Disease is a friend. Because it's that little check light saying, you need to get this checked out. You need to go back and say, what did I have in the last 24 hours? What did I have in the last 3 days? You know, because something there, or what did you do, right? Oh yeah, I didn't get any sleep for the last 3 days. Maybe that's what the problem is. You know, so disease is an effort of nature to free your system. Why do you think we give people fever baths? Because we're trying to make sure they have a fever. What does a fever do? It increases your immune system. It increases your white blood cells, your killer cells, those guys that go to war. We make sure that when you get a fever bath, we're saying, okay, Army, okay, Navy, okay, all the military, listen up. It's time to get your guys together and fight, fight, fight. That's what happens when you get a fever bath. When people have cancer, we put them in a fever bath 5 days a week for 3 weeks. So Saturday and Sunday, they're off for a break. Monday through Friday, they get their fever bath. What's a fever bath? I don't know. Maybe you should do a steam bath, a Russian steam bath. Well, on Sunday, we'll share a little bit about that. But if you go into those, I love fever baths. Some people don't like them because it's too hot. But let me tell you, when you're not feeling well, your numbers can go just boom, right up there, get you at a fever level, keep you at that for about 20, 30, 40 minutes, then take you back down, put a bunch of cold water on you and some ice and everything else, and boom, we're done with the fever treatment for today. And then you have to look forward to that for another 4 days. Then you're like, hallelujah, Saturday and Sunday, woohoo, I don't have to do that. And then Monday comes, oh, here we go again. But no, seriously, when you do these things, your body's saying, whoa. So you're waking up your immune system saying, hey, guys, we got to fight this thing because this is not supposed to be here. So when we're doing that, we're increasing the immune system. We're increasing the battle people. We're increasing the army. We're increasing them to fight back. And what we're doing is we're assisting the body to do it. When you can use your body to do the battle, way better than using a drug. Way better. Because that means that your body is now getting the energy and the strength to do that. Now, if you have somebody that's really sick and they just, they can barely get there, you are not going to do something like that. That's one thing you will not do because you do no harm. So what does that mean? You're doing the right things, but what do you mean? When people are physically too weak, you don't want to take them through that vigorous thing because now what you're going to do is you're going to zap them out of all the energy that they have. So now instead of, here's like where you need to be and get higher and then, stay in this range. But if you go dip, if they're under here and you dip them further down, you're doing more damage. The only thing that I can think of, because most people do not have good bathtubs, bathtubs that you have nowadays, you get in there with your legs, there it is, whoopee twing, right? What's that going to do? I mean, you got to, and then when you get in there like this, then now your knees are out. And you're like, well, how am I going to get a good bath? Well, what you can do is you can get a sheet, and you can put it in there over the top, or you can get one of these things called a Russian steam, which is a black, we have black ones. They're heavy, thick plastic. And you get on a chair, and you have a unit in there that's steaming out like this. And you want to make sure that the chair is not metal, because you'll get burnt. And so the steam is going up, and you're wrapped up. And then you have this plastic thing over you, and your head is out, and you put a thing around here, and you have to have someone keep giving you some cold to the head and giving you some water to drink, and your body is getting hot. So that's a good thing. So that's increasing. That's almost like a fever treatment. And it's something that's really good, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Yeah, and those are awesome. If you're trying to lose weight or diabetic, that's one of the things you can do. You wrap them up in sheets and towels, make sure their little head is out, and they're in there. When my mother went to UG Pines, she weighed a lot, and she was a diabetic for many years. And all I can say is that, I don't know if my mother lost that much weight, but after having a lot of kids, come on. I mean, well, she had a kid, and then within a year or so, she's having another one. Well, the only thing I remember is those were some good times with my mom. We used to go on walks, across the road, down into our field, down to the little creek, and then we'd come back. Or we'd do, what's that guy's name with the curly hair? Richard Simmons. Richard Simmons. Oh, yeah, those were some good times with my mom. Those were times that, we spent, it was just me and my mom. We did some good stuff like that. So that's probably why I like exercise. But when it comes to disease, it's an effort to be a friend. It's telling you that it's helping your body to be able to get rid of that condition. So your body's trying to do everything it possibly can to throw those things off. But that's where we have to go back and evaluate and say, okay, what did I do when it comes to violating the laws of health? Well, what are the laws of health? New start, fresh start, new start. Nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, trusting in God. So we went somewhere. We were somewhere off. So with that, we have to look at that. We have to find out what it is, reevaluate, and then make changes. All right, so the nature is to assist in her efforts to expel impurities and to reestablish right conditions in the system. So what are the natural remedies? Right here they are. Pure air, sunlight, abstemious, which is temperance, staying away from things that are harmful, and not overdoing things that are good. Rest, exercise, proper diet, use of water, trust in divine power. These are true remedies. Every person should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies and how to apply them. That's why you want to come back tomorrow, because we're going to be talking about how to apply these things. If you got pain, come back tomorrow. If you got swelling, come back tomorrow. If you just want to try something, come back tomorrow. We'll give you something. We'll give you something. What kind? Oh, yeah, pine needle tea. And why would you want that? Well, we're going to get there. Thanks for coming. So it's essential both to understand the principles involved in treatment of the sick and to have practical training that will enable one rightly to use this knowledge. You see, the more that we get a little education on how to do this, we'll be better at doing it. The first time you do it, you may not do it that well. That's okay. If you did it, that's where the training comes in. That's the hands-on training that you need. So now I'm going to share with you some herbs. Chansa pydra. What? Oh my goodness. You speak Spanish? Sí, señorita. Huh. Okay, so basically what this is, what you're looking for is you'll see it almost looks like a fern. But when you turn it over, you'll see these little balls. These little balls. You see they're green or they're red, right? And so that's how you identify what this is. And what that name means is stone breaker. So where do we get stones? Kidneys, gallbladder. You see what I'm saying? So this is really good when it comes to your kidneys, your gallbladders, or even UTIs. What's a UTI? You guys are all medical people and didn't even know it. Yeah, sometimes I can't even pronounce the words, I just spell them out. This is what you need. You just write it on a piece of paper, make sure you write it really good so they can read it. So when they're looking for it, they can find it. I can't use like real fast stuff. Sometimes you got to write these things out. Next thing is comfrey. So the comfrey leaf, you can see how it looks. And sometimes it can get fairly big, right? And you can see that it has like little flower on top too. Comfrey is really good for bones. When people have like a break or maybe like a little hairline, you can use comfrey to heal that. We had somebody that hurt their, maybe it was clavicle, and so they used comfrey poultice, I think 3 times a day. I told them, drink some too. Now they'll tell you that you shouldn't drink comfrey, but you can drink comfrey. I just wouldn't overdo it. But he was doing that and doing some hydrotherapy with that, and it heals really quickly. Amazing. It helps net the bone. It's very good for anti-inflammatory. Most people are inflamed, different parts of their body, whether it be your knee, shoulder, wherever. You can use this. Even like when you get a cut, or if you have like maybe a reaction to something, you can also use it for that. It's very good for the skin too. So these are some things that you can do. You can crush it up, you can put it on, put a thing on there as a poultice. You can use it that way. We'll be talking about how to make poultices and stuff like that tomorrow. Sarsaparilla. Ooh, sarsaparilla. Sounds like root beer. Have you ever had a little sarsaparilla? A little drink? It's like root beer. It tastes like root beer. What you want to do is you want to use the root. What that is really good for is for metabolic diseases. Huge for that, right? Hormones, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, kidney problems, arthritis, RA, which is rheumatoid arthritis, skin problems, gout, fluid retention, sarsaparilla. But here's the thing. Do you realize that I already said a few things on this one that I said on the other one? Kidneys, skin, right? So take note of that you're going to see some that overlap with others. So wherever you live, understand what grows wild where you live. Because the more that you know about what grows around where you live, you can take a mental note and say, oh, I usually use this for that, but this here will do it too. So then that way when you have that problem, you say, oh, I can get that and I can use it. And that's being smart when it comes to herbs, because you want to be able to be diverse, you know? You want to be able to use 1 or 2 different things. And usually whatever's close to home is usually the best thing to use. Sweet gum, have you heard of that? I noticed that these trees grow wherever there's pine trees. I don't know what it is, but every time I see a pine tree, I look to see if I can find a sweet gum. And sometimes I'll be walking and I see the leaves of a sweet gum and I'm like, let me see if there's any pine. Oh, there's one. And it's always amazing. For some reason, they must need each other for that area to grow and do well. So sweet gum, what we're looking at is these little things right here. You don't really want them like that, but if you can get them like this, usually spring or early summer, they fall off the trees. When they fall off the trees is when you want to use them, because these little seeds inside there, you want to make a tincture out of them. And what you can use that for is for antiplatelets, right? Thinning your blood, bacteria, viruses. Very, very good stuff here. You can also use the leaves as well, but I usually look for the leaves to identify what it is. It's a 5-point, 2 little, bigger side, and that's the big one. So there's 5 points there. Almost looks like a maple, kind of. But the design of it shows that it's not, right? And so these are the things that you really want to use. Now, is there anything that's bad about this? No, not really. Animals, it doesn't harm animals a bit. It's only when you go outside and you're walking barefoot. When you get on one of those hurt. Yes. Next thing is pine needles. These long pine needles are really good. We're going to have some pine needle tea. I guess we were going to try to have it today. But pine needle tea is so good. You heard of this thing called COVID? You know, we've been suffering with COVID for the last 2 years. Well, this is something that you can take, so then that way it helps you so you don't get COVID. Even if you do get COVID, drink some of this. If you're around people that are sick, drink some of this. And they don't even have to have COVID. They just might be sick. Just drink some of this. The reason why I say that is because it tastes really, really good. Has anybody ever had golden seal? Yeah, it's bitter, right? Oh, her face is like, oh, that was priceless. But yeah, so this, put a little honey in there. Oh my goodness, it is an awesome tea. For something that it does what it does, it's an awesome tea. You know, it thins your blood. You know, people that have had COVID or have had this vaccination that are dying and stuff, they're noticing that when they're cleaning them out to embalm them, they're pulling and pulling and pulling all this white stuff out. It's because they're clogged up. Their arteries have been clogged up. And so we need to thin out the blood. We need to make sure that we're moving those things, that stuff out of the system, so then that way the body has good blood flow. And so it's very important. So it helps to thin the blood. It's good for SARS. It's good for viral stuff. SARS-CoV-2 inhibits thinning your blood, antioxidants, so it's high in antioxidants. It helps for chest congestion. So if you're kind of, oops, I should do that. If you're feeling it in your chest, kind of tight or whatever, this is a great tea to start drinking. It thins your blood. It's high in vitamin C as well as vitamin A. Yeah, so there's only like 2 types that I know of that are really good. The best ones I stick with are the long ones. The long ones. Now, here's the key. When you're making it, white pine. Yeah, those are good ones. I think you can use fern too. What's that?
The plain old southern yellow loblolly pines that they make timber out of.
Okay.
That grows everywhere.
Yeah, they're long like this? The needles are long? Yeah, just use those. They're fine. So basically, another thing about it is, where's I going to go with that? I don't know. Oh, this is where I was going to go with that. When you're brewing this, very, very important, listen up. When you're brewing it, do not boil it for more than 5 minutes. Don't boil it for 30 minutes. You're going to die if you drink that because it turns into turpentine. I drank 5 cups or 4 cups of that, and I had boiled it for like 30 minutes because I was outside doing some work, and I'm like, oh, no, I forgot. I put that on high. So I went back in, and I shut it off, and I'm like, well, I don't want to waste that. I added a little bit more water, and I drank it all, and I did not feel good. My stomach was like, oh, yeah, better take some charcoal.
Should it be fresh or dry?
Fresh. Dried is not so good. Fresh is best. All right. Are you guys having fun yet? Okay. Blue vervain. Verbane. How do you say it? Verbena? 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 There's a violet and a blue. So the verbena or verbena, whatever, tomato, okay? It's a very unique family. What it does, it's amazing when people are sick. We carry this at the store at Country Life. And when people were coming in sick, I said, look, you need to get 5 cups of this in the evening, and by morning you'll be fine. Because that's how fast it works. It's amazing stuff. It's good for your nervous system. It helps with your fluid retention. It helps with asthma, heart conditions, headache, depression, anxiety, and kidney stones. This is a third thing that we just talked about that's good for your kidneys. Second thing that said specifically kidney stones. So I mean, these are great things. And let me tell you, when you're looking at this, it's kind of prickly. It has like little hair stuff, and it kind of like clings to you. And if you touch the leaves, they're prickly that it kind of hurts. So yeah, that's it's a very good thing. Now everybody knows about this one.
If you've got a number of these things, say for kidneys, you take them all 3 at the same time or different times, or is it going to be a problem?
You could. I mean, you just don't want to overdo if you don't need to.
No interactions or nothing like that.
Well, it depends. If you've got some other things going on, like diabetes or heart issues or whatever, you might want to see which one that wouldn't counter affect that. Yeah. So I would just use one of them, and especially if it grows where you live, then that would be definitely the one that you want to use. Just because usually whatever grows around us is the nutrients that our body needs. Yep.
You wouldn't want to mix any of this stuff with prescription medications without consulting your physician first.
Yeah, here's the thing about that. You go to any medical doctor, and they're going to say, oh, no, that's going to mess up this or that. You better just stay on your medication because you know what? They don't know. They don't know. I know Stanford and Harvard did for a period of time have some herbal type classes that they let the doctors take. And so that way they were up to date on some of those things. Because a lot of times when people come in, like I'm part of the American Public Health Association, And when you go into the alternative section of that, a lot of medical doctors will come into those classes and they're like, why would we even ask the question of what they're taking? Because we don't know what these things do. And I said, that's the reason why. You want to know, are they taking garlic on a regular basis? Because what does garlic do? It thins your blood. Well, most medical doctors don't know that. But if they studied some of these things, well, then they would know. And so as they cross over and get into some of the alternative stuff, they start learning these things, and they're like, oh, well, if they're taking this, well, then they shouldn't be taking this medicine. And it's the same thing when people go for like cancer, when you have cancer. If you go with their protocol, then you have to be very careful what you take. Well, I know ACAT is not going to interrupt with any of their medication. However, there are new medications that are out, but for the majority, it will not. Casey's tea is very good, but I've had one person go to their doctor and their husband said, well, you need to tell them what you're taking for herbs. So they showed him, and oh yeah, well, you take blessed thistle, that's going to mess up your kidneys and your what was it, kidney and liver. And I'm like, why are you listening to him? I know what I'm telling you, this is good. And when they were taking it, they were feeling great. They were feeling fantastic. They were just feeling so good, like they didn't have cancer. But then once they stopped that and they went on the medication, they're feeling sick, they're having so much pain, and they're wondering what in the world's going on. Because blessed thistle, you can eat all thistles. All thistles are okay to eat. Now, who would want to eat that? By the time you get off all the bad stuff, you know, the little thistle thorn things, and then by the time it's time to eat, there ain't much left. There ain't much left of that. And so, actually, it does help with those things. But see, the doctor probably just had misinformation, or they were trying to just find something to say it's not good. But my thing is, when I ask people in specific positions, like even physical therapists, when I wanted to put my dad on some hydrotherapy treatments, I said, you guys should think about doing some hydrotherapy. And she said, it doesn't work. And I said, whoa, hold on there. Why don't you say we just don't have enough help to do it? Because you have too many people. It can, absolutely. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. Because if you do it on a certain part of their body, you can actually make things worse. Like if you're diabetic, you don't want to give them a hot foot bath. You don't want to put the fomentation on certain areas. Over this area here is fine because this part right here has the most feeling in all of your body. Your hands, your feet, and other places would not be good. It's not safe. So yeah, so that's why we have to be educated and we have to learn some of these things. But for the most part, a lot of these things are pretty good. And so we have to be very careful that when we're doing things, either you take the medicine or you take the herb. And then over a period of time, if you get rid of the medicine and you're doing all these new things, like the 8 laws of health, plus taking these herbs and the vitamins or whatever it is that you need to take for supplements, you will find out that you are healthy, you're feeling way better than when you were on the medication, and then you have to stay on the program. It's called a lifestyle change. So if people are not willing to take the lifestyle change, then I say, just take your medicine. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so basically you look for different things, and at different times of year, you'll be able to find these. On my video that I have that's on a flash drive, the senna I found at the new church at UG Pines. And so now it's not there anymore because now they put gravel or cement over that for parking. But it's easy to find because you're looking for this little pod thing, or you're looking for the way the leaves are shaped. And the way that this is, it's kind of roundish. It's kind of interesting the way it grows. So when you identify these things in nature and you see them, you're like, wow. So you might read about it because, you know, when you read about it and you see something drawn, it's just not the same. But yeah, so senna, I usually tell people it's right in the name what it's going to do. It's going to send you to the bathroom. It's going to send you to get rid of all that waste product. So, but sometimes senna can be a little harsh in the sense that, oh, your stomach hurts and it's cramping. So it's not necessarily something that you want to use, but I know in the islands, they would use that a lot of times with their kids, you know, to clean them out real good, you know, once a year or twice a year. So then that way, you know, they sent them to the bathroom and get everything out, whether it be maybe some worms or whether it be, you know, they just haven't been eating right or they haven't been going to the bathroom enough. That's something that's going to help clear it out. And that's one thing that you want to do is you want to clean out that, so then that way you can help the system to be able to heal, because now everything's working a lot better. Any other questions?
I have a comment. There's a friend of mine that is good at identifying this, and I'm going to try to give her here in the spring of next year. She's from Seal, Alabama, Dana.
Dana?
And she can identify and talk to us about that kind of thing.
Excellent. Goldenrod, you'll see a lot of this growing, like when you're driving, you can look in the ditches and you'll see these growing. This is a very good plant. It's a diuretic. It helps with anti-inflammatory, so it gets rid of inflammation. Helps with asthma, liver problems. It's an autoimmune. It helps with pain, swelling, and also great for skin. So, yeah. Should you be taking it? Maybe.
No, goldenrod has always been kind of a quandary, because as we grew up, we heard that, that it is one of the stimulants for hay fever.
Uh-huh.
And I always had to deal with hay fever. And then as I got older, they say no, that hay fever is not, it's basically ragweed. Yeah. So I see you've got on there, it's good for asthma.
Uh-huh.
I have asthma. I've stayed away from goldenrod because I've been told the opposite thing, so I'm kind of
Leery.
confused.
Yeah, so one thing you can do is you can probably do like get some herbal books, and you can look at them, because every herb book has different things. Like Jethro Kloss has a big thing. And what is so interesting is that when you buy these books, it never tells you necessarily what to, sometimes it'll tell you the leaf or the root or whatever, right? So it'll probably tell you that, and it'll just tell you what it is that you need to use. But it doesn't tell you how much, it doesn't tell you how to prepare it, and it doesn't tell you those things. So that's the thing that I find, you know, it's great to have these books if you already know the other things. Because most of the books out there, they only tell you a part of it. When you get the real book that tells you how much dosage, how much to use, how do you know which herbs should be mixed with each other, how to enhance one herb so then that way it's more potent, those are the things you really need to know. And those are in the real books that you go to school for. You know, you're paying that to really get the understanding of what goes with what. And a lot of times, you know, they call them practitioners. I'm a practitioner. I'm practicing. Always practicing. So I'm an expert in practicing, which is kind of a scary thing.
Peer-reviewed studies or double-blind tests
Mm-hmm.
on any of these?
Say it again.
Is there any peer-reviewed studies
Mm-hmm.
or double-blind studies done with any of these?
You know, that's a very good question. I don't know if there is or not, but there should be, because I know that when I was at UG Pines last, there was this one doctor, he was working on showing what people had when they first came in, and then looking at their tests when they left, and to see what kind of things that were done in between to understand what helped them in order to reverse their disease or to get them to the level where they're feeling better, doing better. And so that would be a really good thing to do, because when you do those type of studies, you have research. And people want to know about research.
Yeah, I'm the one that looks up the research before I do anything, even with the medications I take now.
Mm-hmm. And that's very good to do, because a lot of times when you do get your medication, the pharmacist doesn't necessarily go over the information with the people. And I think that is so vital that the pharmacists do that, because the pharmacist is the one, kind of like the herbalist, you know? They're the ones that know what the drugs do and what things correspond with that can make it worse or can enhance it. And so to me, what they do is very vital. And a lot of times when you get medication, they'll run off a whole sheet of things like what that drug might do to you by taking it, or it may say what might interact with it. So, I mean, that is so key, and especially if you have like major diseases, yes, that is another reason why you should look up some of these herbs and know for yourself what to do with them. Because, yeah, not all of them everybody and anybody can use. That's why a lot of times when people would come into country life, I didn't have a history on anybody. That's why I had to pray, because I didn't know what to do. And they were just coming in and they're like, well, I know I need something, but I don't know what I need. And so they said, well, there's the doctor. And I'm like, okay, what's your problem? But usually it was always something that, got worse. They already had this problem, they already got that problem, and now it's just like, oh, I can't do anything now because this one little bit makes it so that way I can't do what I would like to do. And so they're just talking about that last thing. And that's why earlier I said, when I prayed, I just had to ask God, because I didn't know. And I don't like to guess. And I don't want to guess, because I don't want anybody to have a bad experience, right? And so, that's why you have to ask a lot of questions and find out. But to me, it's really doing a lot of guessing. And sometimes if nothing happened within 2 weeks, I tell them, try this for a week or two and see how it's going. So then that way we know if we need to do something else. So that's why I say I'm a practitioner, because I'm practicing. I'm practicing on the guess. And so that's not a really good thing. But if you know what works and different problems, but here we have so much more variables. I mean, someone might have heart disease and they have diabetes, and then this person only has, asthma or whatever, but they both having this problem, but this person can have that, but, they got this and this, and they're taking that medication, so that corresponds with that. So then you're like, oh, yeah. So now you have to do something really simple until you can start getting some changes, so then that way we can get some of those things done. But really, you have to hit the heavy-duty stuff in order to change that.
There are some peer-reviewed studies and blind studies on certain herbs, but to recommend all these things for the years that they've been touted, there should have been studies already done.
Yeah, because it's been a long time. And the best studies that you could probably get are one that are done like in India, China, because those are places where they use a lot of the herbs anyway. Or even in Europe, you'll see that they use more of these natural things than we do here in the States. And the reason why naturopathic doctors or functional medicine doctors are so popular is because they're using natural stuff. They're using certain things, they're using certain tests, so then that way they can find out what the problem is.
We should be accessing those data from there and have it translated and have it available, because I'm not just going to go on your word. I want to see the studies.
Absolutely. So I'm giving you some good ones to look at.
I was just going to say, pertaining to that gentleman we went to health seminar, his grandpa had taught his daddy, and his daddy taught him all these herbal remedies. And he's had success with them all, and nobody did a study. Back then, they didn't do studies.
They didn't.
And God says he's given us the cure for every disease.
Absolutely.
Man, and it's here on this earth.
Absolutely. So different types of mindsets are going to say, you know what? I got to be sure. And I understand that. Absolutely. Because you don't want to take anybody's word for it. Just the same thing with God's word.
This man right here is a walking problem. He has heart disease, he's diabetic, he has neuropathy.
That's why. That's why he searched things out.
He has to study everything that the doctor.
So what do you think about infrared lights?
Even what the doctor's prescribing.
Yeah, you better look at those things.
Yes, he does.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
Those are studies that have been done over a period of time, and to prove that these certain drugs do help in these situations, but they also
The side
find-
effects.
They also find the interactions when they do this.
And those are the key. And that's the key part. Yep. So my big thing is every person should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies and how to apply them. It's both to understand the principle involved in the treatment of the sick and to have a practical training that will enable one rightly to use this knowledge. Everything you have to continue to learn, and just take one thing and then you add to it. If it takes you a month just on one thing, that's okay. You're headed in the right direction. And the use of natural remedies requires an amount of care and effort that many are not willing to give, because it takes a little longer. If you can pop a pill and don't feel the pain no more, yeah, everybody wants that. But that might not be the right way to go, which is usually not the right way to go. But nature's process of healing and upbuilding is gradual, and to the impatient, it seems too slow. So you have to take that into consideration too. Where's the person at? Are they willing to do that? And second, selective messages, page 288, first paragraph says, we have been instructed that in our treatment of the sick, we should discard the use of drugs. There are simple herbs that can be used for the recovery of the sick, whose effect upon the system is very different from that of drugs that poison the blood and endanger the life. If you look at most medical drugs or medicine, you will notice that it has a long list of things that are not good. That is side effects of taking the drug. More times than not, when one person gets on some medication, after taking it for a certain period of time, next thing you know, they have to have some more medicine, more drugs. Because now it tampered with something else, so now they have to take 2 drugs, and then that tampers with something else, so now they're on 3 drugs. And sometimes you go to people's houses and they have so much medication. And the thing I ask them is, do you want to be well? Do you want to get better? Throw them all away. What? Throw them all away. But, okay, so I'm going to go over 8 health issues and herbs that you can use. For cancer, the top 3 is spirulina, chlorella, wheatgrass. Those are the top 3 for all types of cancer. One thing that I do have, and I did bring some, is the ACAC tea. I don't know if you heard of the lady named Casey. She was a nurse in Canada, and she went to some Indians and asked them what to do for that. And so the Indian went around, and he was the healer. And so he went around, he picked up these different herbs, and that's what's in ACAC tea. Where I get it is from a place where they had worked with the doctor and her, and they have now taken on, and all of this is organic. So that's a good thing to know. And so I've seen good success, and the reason why is the spirulina and the chlorella are very important because they're green. And so with that, it helps to get the body in the alkaline state and also to fight the cancer. Now, when it comes to women's health, we see a lot of hormonal issues and problems with that. So when we're looking at hormonal issues, whether it be like hot flashes, menstruation, and stuff like that, they're going through, different things. Their hormones are going crazy. These are the ones that I would recommend. Black cohosh for sure, dangquan, dominica, and ashwagandha. Now, ashwagandha is one of those ones that could be or might not be, just kind of depends on some things. But one thing about ashwagandha is it will help you to lose weight too. So that could be a plus in that area. For
cohosh, though, you can only take it for a short period of time. It causes your blood pressure to drop, causes nausea, dizziness.
Yeah, and so you're not going to take a whole lot of that. When you do use it, like we have like different things put together. Like if you call Country Life and say, hey, I want some of that tea that you have for women health. It has a number of different herbs in it. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to use it, especially like say you have menstruation problems or hot flashes. You're not going to use it for the whole month. You're going to use it like a week before the menstruation, or a lot of times when women have hot flashes, it's usually due to probably like sugar or something that's sweet or something that's going to make the hot flash target or do something so then that way the body has the hot flash. So we have to find out, why are you having those hot flashes? Is it connected with the thyroid? Is it connected with something else? Is it connected with a certain food? So if we're doing those things, then we can see what's better to do. Because to me, I would prefer to do stuff with food and then also work with maybe some herbs or some supplements. But food is number one because that's what everybody's going to do anyway. So we've got to find out what the sensitivities are from those foods and then work with that, get rid of the inflammation, doing those other things that will help get rid of that inflammation, so then that way we can get the cells back into being normal and doing what they need to do for functioning. Yeah, so there's something that's not right. Probably when your immune system is relaxed, that's when it goes into an effect. There's a number of things you can do with that too. When it comes to infectious diseases, golden seal, wormwood, olive leaf, aloe vera, astragalus, pardiaco, and cat's claw. Those are some really good ones to help boost up your immune system and to help you whenever you go through that. Tomorrow I will be sharing, I think I have some information on if there's something like infectious disease, what kind of hydrotherapy treatment you can use for that. So tomorrow I'll be talking about that. When it comes to men's health, we're usually looking at the prostate. When it comes to women, they got a whole lot of stuff going on. I mean, just this part right here, they got a lot. When it comes to a guy, he don't have as much. So that's why we have more women problems than we do with men problems. But usually with the men, it's usually something about the prostate not working right. So with that, pumpkin seeds, pizum, salpimento, yambi, yohimbi, and maca. Now, some of that is also not just for the prostate, but for, what do they call it? When they have a problem, there you go. Yeah, erectile dysfunction. When that's going on, then the last two on that list would be very good for that. The other ones are for prostate. I was going to give you like the letters of that, but thank you. All right, so autoimmune diseases, you're talking about RA, you're talking about anything that where your body is fighting against itself. So artemisia, another word for that is tahibo, artemisia, wormwood, I think that's called also wormwood, sarsaparilla, white willow bark, and skullcap. They're all very helpful when it comes to autoimmune diseases. St. John's wort is the next one for depression. Mungwort, valerian, American or Asian ginseng. Because there's a number of different types of ginseng, but the American is the one that I would usually go for, but if you can get Asian, that's fine too. Now valerian, talking about herbs, you're not going to take a whole lot of that because that can give you like headaches if you take too much of it. So you want to make sure that you're taking a smaller dose. So if you're using all of those herbs for that one issue, you are not going to put 1 teaspoon of everything of that in there. It's different by bark, leaf, and root. And if it's powder, will denote how much of each that you will do. So, and then also by the herb and how strong it is and what kind of side effects that it might have, like she was saying, you know, the one with black cohosh. I haven't had too many people with too many issues with that, but the blood pressure, yeah, that can go down. However, you want to make sure that it's a small dose. So if you're making 5 cups to drink 5 cups a day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you got 4 in that last one. I would probably also put in there with depression would be like chamomile or lavender, right? More calming. No, you don't really want something to calm because you already are calm, depressed, right? So with that, lavender would be fine with that. But if you're doing like 5 cups, you're going to probably take, you know, a teaspoon of this, half a teaspoon of that, half a teaspoon of that, and a teaspoon of this into X amount of water, like 4 cups. And then you will simmer it for X amount of time, and then you can steep it, and then you would drink that throughout the day, whether it's hot or cold. Because that's how a lot of ours are. Usually you'll see like maybe 8 different types, but there's some herbs that work better by themselves, and some herbs are more potent and they're stronger when you have other herbs working with it. And so that's a big thing right there, yes.
We were talking about leaves and roots and everything. If you do it in like capsule form, I know that, for instance, maybe in Germany they have like guaranteed potency for their herbs. Is there any place in the United States that has that?
Yeah, actually, Rainbow, Solaray, because they have like a rainbow across their thing. And I actually went to their facility, and they also work with the University of Utah. And they would have like, this was many years ago, but they would have, I think the blue tops were for the herbs. The red ones, they put them through X amount of stuff to make sure that the potency is what it is. I think that the Now brand is supposed to be pretty good because they are standardized, which is like what medication is. They're standardized. They're making sure that it has whatever it says in it and it has that amount in it. So that's a good thing. I'm not really a big fan of now, but they're trying to win me back because they standardized everything. But if they're doing those extra checks, then you know that they're doing their thing. With Solar Ray, the guy sold his company. And so since he sold it, I don't know if they're still doing the same things as they were before. I mean, when I went there, it was still kind of like a mom and pop, but it was huge. And he would never sell any of his stuff unless it was a health food store, because the guy had a problem where the doctor said he would never walk again. And so he went into a health food store and they helped him, and he's running again and doing all kind of stuff. And so when we went there, they paid for us to, like for us, since we were buying a lot of their products, we had enough for like 6 people to go there, and they put us up and took care of us, and then took us to all the different places of where they did their stuff. And then we also went to their house, met his mother. She gave us a cookbook, and we ate there. We just had a really nice time. And it was basically all people that owned health food stores. And it was really nice to be able to talk to them and different things, because they were the ones, I think, that came out with time released. That was way back in the day, like in the early 1990s, that sustained release. And so they were doing that at the University of Utah, and they were showing how they were having that done with that pill or whatever, so that way it would go through in that. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, that would be the company that I would go with. Now is supposed to be standardized, whatever that means, right? Nature's Plus? Okay. Or Nature's Way? Nature's Plus. Okay. All right, for anxiety and diabetes, anxiety would be hops, chamomile, and lavender. Even for like sleeping issues, those 3 are really good if you're having problems sleeping. If you're having a real big problem sleeping, I would say I would just put a little touch of kava kava in there. Diabetes, my number one thing that I usually give to people would be berberine. You take 500 milligrams of that 3 times a day. Fenugreek is really good. Ceylon cinnamon, it's a specific type of cinnamon. Not all cinnamon is the same. So it would be that particular kind. Germinium, Sylvester, that's a really good one as well. And bitter melon is another really good one. So those are my top picks when it comes to diabetes. I've done a lot with people with diabetes, so that's probably, that and cancer are probably my 2 biggest ones that I deal a lot with.
Bitter melon as the fruit or tablet?
Yeah, so this format would be in a pill form. Yep. All right. Medical missionary. Oh, yes.
Yeah, is it true that you should not administer like lavender or tea tree oil to boys in puberty because it will cause them to grow female?
It depends on how often you're using that, but I know of a girl that says that if you want to enhance, whether it be a male organ or whether it be women's breasts, that they did use some herbs and it did work. And so I don't know how long they did it or in what capacity that they did it in, but I don't think that you're going to really find a lot of that taking place. I think a lot of times they have to write these things down just to cover themselves, because some people will go overboard on stuff. They will just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, you know, and it would be so aggressive and so much of that it's a possibility. But why would you do a lot of it?
I know sometimes like for example lavender or tea tree oil, like tea trees in like some boys' products.
Mm-hmm.
Or lavender, I would use it for like say like a bite, sting, or something like that. And if you have a teenage boy, you may want to be careful not. You're not really trying to over.
Charcoal. Use charcoal. You know, if you have any doubts, use charcoal, especially if it's like a bee sting or if it's inflammation or something like that. Well, not inflammation, but like say a bite or something. I'd use peppermint to kind of burn it a bit, or menthol with charcoal. So then that way you're getting rid of the inflammation or the redness, and you're also getting rid of the itch or the sting by using something like peppermint or menthol to kind of draw it out.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the estrogen.
Yeah, because of the lavender.
Yeah, I think there's, I've heard that it's actually true when someone uses on your child is because like the left breast, I can't remember what happened, but it was applied in that area
Mm-hmm.
and it got bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked online and said that should be avoided because of that.
Mm-hmm. Especially when they're in their puberty. Yeah. Yeah. But depending on how much you use as well. I mean, if you're in a life and death situation and that's all you have, and it's hard to get somewhere to get something, I would apply it, but then, pray about it and go. But if you're using it over and over for a period of time, like in days, I can see where that would definitely make a difference. Mm-hmm. But if you're just applying it one time until you're able to do something different, then that's a whole nother story. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any information about CBD oil or CBD gummies?
Yeah, so CBD, how many people are familiar with that? That's good. Everybody that don't know about it, very good. You're not doing that. Okay. Did you raise your hand?
No, I did not.
You don't know what it is?
I know what it is, I just don't use it.
Yeah, I don't use it either. But now CBD oil, that's always a really good one that people like to ask. Well, here's the thing. There's certain things with CBD, some of the things, what you have to do is you have to find out what exactly is in the oil itself. Now, there's parts of that, which is cannabis, by the way, which is another word for weed, okay, or marijuana. Yeah, well, in some places they call it weed because they're dopey or they're into drugs. Well, anyway, when it comes to marijuana, or CBD, or cannabis is the name that they use, cannabis, there's certain areas, for instance, some herbs, they have a root and then they have little roots off the root. Now on those, some of those are uppers and some of them are downers. So when it comes to understanding stuff like that, when it comes to cannabis, using different parts of that plant can have different effects. So when you smoke it, you're using basically the leaves. And so because of that, it kind of does something to your brain, and it makes you feel kind of mellow or whatever, but it also does something to your brain. So when you're getting the oil, you want to make sure that it has not that part of it in it. And the reason why is because that is like a chemical that's doing something to your brain. What is it? THC. Yeah, THC. So you have to look to find out what it has in there, and then you have to know what you're looking for, like the THC. And then if it doesn't have that in there, then you're okay to use that.
In the state of Georgia, you can't get CBD oil, THC in it, it's illegal.
You can't get it at all?
You can get CBD oil, but you can't get
It doesn't have that in it.
It doesn't have it, it's illegal in Georgia.
So don't go to Alabama. No, I don't know. I don't know if they sell it there. It is very beneficial. That's always a controversial question. Why did you bring that up, right? You're trying to put me on a hot spot.
If it's got enough CBD in it.
It will work. If it doesn't, it's no good. It's junk. And a lot of times you have to have good quality stuff, and you don't know where half of the stuff is. You go to the gas station and they're selling it. Now, who's going to buy that at a gas station?
Well, this much I know.
Mm-hmm.
I've smoked marijuana for many years. And one night, I'm sitting on the bed, getting ready to go to bed. And that situation, I was smoking joint before we went to bed. And God said to me, as clear as you've been speaking today, you're blocking me out.
Mm-hmm.
So the THC messes with your frontal lobe,
Mm-hmm.
and the CBD then is a different part of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
So
because that's why it's important to know what part of the plant to use. When it comes to ginseng, what do you think of ginseng when you use it? Strength, right? You feel good, you have energy, right? Yeah, well, do you realize that in ginseng, you would never know this, but ginseng has an upper and a downer because it's the root of the ginseng that they use. But on that root, it has other little roots. One part of it is a downer and the other part is an upper. So how do you know what part you're getting? Most people don't know. And if they don't know that fact, then they're just taking whatever in it and they say, oh, it don't work. It's because they don't have a good reputable company that is using the right part of the herb. And a lot of these places that put these things out, oh, yeah, well, let's trump on that because it's all about marketing. Antioxidants. You know when we had antioxidants, oh, that was huge. They put that on their new box of cereal or whatever. Oh, yeah, this is high in antioxidant. What does it have in there? One little blueberry. You know what I'm saying? So as long as you have one in there, you can say it's high in antioxidants because that one little blueberry is high in antioxidants. It's the number 2 thing on the list, especially if it's a wild blueberry. It's one of the highest things that have an antioxidant, right? So they can get away with this, and that's why there's a problem with marketing. I have a marketing degree because, you know, I had to market myself if I had my own place. So I had to know how it works. But they're so deceiving, and when they're giving the message, that people don't even understand what exactly they're getting. And like he was saying, you have to research it. That's why when you look at something and you're looking at it and you're like, oh, here's the ingredients. Okay, well, you better read it because if you want to have a clear mind, you better know what you're taking in. Not just eating, but seeing, breathing, hearing, everything. We need to know what's going in because that's what's going to make the difference overall. Did I read this? No. Okay. God has caused to grow out of the ground herbs for the use of man and women, right? And if we understand the nature of these roots and herbs and make a right use of them, there would be a necessity of there would not be a necessity for running to the doctor so frequently. And people would be in better health than they are today. Today, I don't know what it is. Always, I'm going to that. Why? You go there like every week. What is going on? But if we just take a look at what we're doing in our life, we can make some changes, and we won't have to be doing that. But to me, if you're eating good quality food, that's what's going to make the difference. And second selective messages, page 289, second paragraph says, the Lord has provided antidotes for diseases in simple plants, and these can be used by faith with no denial of faith, for by using the blessings provided by God for our benefit, we are cooperating with Him. He can use water and sunshine and the herbs which He has caused to grow, and healing modalities brought on by indiscretion of accident. So God can do some big things. And it also goes on to say, we do not manifest a lack of faith when we ask God to bless His remedies. True faith will thank God for the knowledge of how to use these precious blessings in a way which will restore mental and physical vigor. So, what is disease? Disease is an effort of nature to do what? Free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthful conditions should be changed, and wrong habits need to be corrected. Then, and only then, can nature is to be assisted in her efforts to expel impurities and to reestablish right conditions in the system. All right, well, thank you very much. I hope that you were able to get some information out of this, that you can apply some of these things. And tomorrow I will have these little flash drives